Consistency and continuity today on Night of the Shield. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Night of the Shield. I'm Jason Smith, a.k.a. The Knight, and welcome back as we celebrate a 34-7 win over the San Francisco 49ers. Last week, it was all about optimism and reality, and we find ourselves back in familiar ground as we talk a little bit about consistency and continuity. But before we get started, hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, so you can be updated every time I drop another episode. And go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Let me know how long you've been rocking right here on this channel. And if you're new here, let me know that as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this because there's a lot to kind of cover in a short amount of time. I try not to make these videos as long as I used to. If I'm going to start making more long-form content, I'd rather do it in the form of live videos, which I am currently working on. I got live videos coming. I'm bringing in somebody to help me produce the live show so we could read your comments and we could follow along. So just bear with me as I put that together. I'm real excited about it as well. Also, Night of the Shield is brought to you by Independently Blind Studios. If you guys have not checked out my Independently Blind stuff where I talk about educating, advocating, motivating, and inspiring people that are dealing with loss. Primarily, I deal with sight loss. That's what I have. But it's a fantastic channel. We got a lot of things brewing over there. I'm getting ready to hopefully launch something very special over on that channel as I work with some teens. Really excited moving forward on that. If you guys want to support me in that journey, please head on over to Independently Blind. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So last week we talked a lot about optimism when it meets reality and how a lot of the times optimism tends to, especially as a fan, from a fanatic perspective, it can get really brutal when the regular season starts because we have all this hype, all this momentum. We felt it last year as we went undefeated in preseason, and then the regular season product wasn't up to snuff. But I think there's a bit of a change happening here in Las Vegas, and we're going to talk about it a little bit today because for the first time, everything that was talked about during the week as it came to the joint practices with the Raiders and the 49ers, it kind of bled into that preseason game. Now, we all know how this works. Preseason is preseason, regular season is regular season. But I told you last week in that video, the one thing I was looking for is consistency. I wanted to see consistency from the second level players, the third level players, because that's a good tell sign that if your depth is playing up to par, then your starter should be even better than that, right? So again, all the reports that came out from the joint practices from our starters really bled in, and the secondary guys, some players are obviously mixed up in the mix. I know we had some offensive linemen out there. We had running backs out there. A couple of cornerbacks that were rumored to be starters were in the mix on Sunday. But primarily, you were looking at second tier to third, fourth tier players on Sunday, and they performed at a very high level, very consistent with the reports that came out of joint practices from our number ones. That's super exciting. Now, I know I've been watching a lot of content, a lot of stuff that I've been watching out there, and a lot of people are down on Zeus. I just want to make my thoughts very clear when it comes to this topic. When you're looking at Zeus, and all you're looking at Zeus from is the goggles of Josh Jacobs, he's never obviously going to meet that standard. Not this early for sure, okay? He's got to get some reps. He's got to get some rhythms. But right now, he is not number 28. I do not expect him to be number 28, and I promise you that this coaching staff does not expect him to be number 28. If we're not rocking Josh Jacobs in week one or even all season, this is going to be a running back by committee agenda. You saw Zeus, you saw McCormick, you saw Abdullah. Those types of players, each of them are going to have a role. Each of them are going to have assignments, and they'll be utilized accordingly. We'll see if any of them develop into being a full-time primary back, but Josh McDaniels historically has been a running back by committee type guy, so he's not going to put all of his eggs in one basket unless he has a Josh Jacobs. And even then, I think that you preserve Josh Jacobs a little bit more this year and not run him so hard into the ground and show the man some respect, unless you're going to pay the guy the top tier money he's looking for. Just my opinion. Now, I know there's reports about that. Look, I'm going to say this about Josh real quick, and then I'm going to move on. That's Jacobs, by the way. I expect Josh to be here. I don't expect Josh to be here anytime soon. I expect Josh to be here probably by the Dallas game or after. There's no reason. Once he signs that tender or signs the extension with the Raiders, he's obligated to report to camp. I don't think he has any intentions for what they're offering and what they're trying to pay him for him to be a part of this training camp, to run himself any more into the ground that he has to in any contact way. So if it's going to go down, it's going to go down either right before the Dallas game or shortly after. He'll get into camp and start preparing for when the Raiders want to bring him back into the fold, whether that's week 1, week 2, whatever they decide moving forward. I think that's when we'll know for sure whether or not Josh Jacobs is going to hold out or not. Other than that, I don't need to continue to ride something that's not going to get us anywhere. Let's just focus on what we got, because that's what we got. And I don't want to speculate and talk about what Dave should do or what Josh should do. Josh is a top-tier running back in this National Football League game. I want him here. I think he makes a big difference. You're seeing the way the defense is playing. You're seeing the potential from the offense. Josh Jacobs is just an added bonus to that. And for me, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Get the man in here. But at the same time, there's the reality of finance, building a football team for the future, not putting, again, once using the term all your eggs in one basket. So, I mean, I'm going to let those guys decide what they're going to do, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. Josh has a number. The Raiders have a number. Let's see if they can meet in the middle somewhere. If not, we got to move forward. Game's got to be played. We got to have players step up, and we're looking at some young cats to be able to come in here and do that. All right, so since we're on the offensive side of the ball still, let's just continue that conversation. A lot has been said about AOC, and I'm going to be honest with you once again, man. I really liked what I saw. I'm not going to jump on this bandwagon that this guy is our future quarterback or that he should get the start over Jimmy Garoppolo. One preseason game is not going to set him apart from Jimmy Garoppolo. In fact, Aiden looks so good, it makes me want to hold out as long as we can before we implement him into regular season action, because I believe if a Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy enough to start, you're still paying the guy. Let's pay this guy to go out there, lead us. He's experienced. The team loves him. He's a locker room presence. If he gets hurt, now the conversation can be had if this continues, because once again, this episode is all about consistency and continuity. If AOC continues to play the preseason out the way that he did in week 1, he could solidify himself as the automatic number 2, and you still keep Hoyer around for coaching perspectives for both Jimmy and Aiden moving forward. So I think, if anything, from my perspective, we are in a very good situation from the quarterback spot, as far as you still have Jimmy Garoppolo, who currently is healthy enough to start week 1. If anything happens, we have a promising number 2 if he continues to show consistency. If not, we have Brandon Hoyer that could hold it down until he is. But I think the longer we wait, if we were patient enough to let AOC fully develop and even get some game tape, some live, real first season game tape, game planning situations when you're game planning versus an opponent. Let me put it this way. Week 4, and I'll be breaking down the first quarter of the game probably sometime this week, if not next week, talking about my predictions for quarter 1. We'll get into all that when that video comes out. But San Diego, I did it again. I can't help it. Los Angeles Chargers, week 4 is a team that we're very familiar with. We're going to have tape on them. They're division rivals. There's going to be a lot of game planning and preparation for that game, and that's the type of experience that Aiden needs without the pressure of going out there and performing. So Jimmy G can stay active, stay healthy, moving this team forward. This is great leaps and bounds from a learning perspective for Aiden O'Connell. There's no need to rush it. I don't believe we're in a situation right now where we have to. Now, again, he goes out there, continues to earn that spot, and it happens to be week 2 or 3 where we have to put him in there. then it is what it is. I mean, we got no harm, no foul. I think at this point, we're looking at putting him in sooner rather than later because depending on how the season goes, we need to truly know what we have in Aiden before the draft next year. Just my personal thought and perspective as far as AOC goes. But the guy performed, loved his presence in the pocket. I love the way that he just would deliver the ball. It was very accurate. I expected a little bit more on him leading some of the receivers and having more than just accuracy, being able to kind of anticipate and throw his wide receivers open a little bit more and hit him in stride. But, I mean, for his first attempt at this with all the nerves and the way that he was able to control that, I mean, he was probably shaking inside, but you did not see it on the field. He was very composed, delivered the ball well. But, again, I've learned over the years, too early. Liked what we saw, but again, this video is all about consistency and continuity. That takes time, not one preseason game. All right, let's go ahead and jump on the defensive side of the ball because I think that's where, once again, it rose to the occasion. It made a lot of noise, and it makes a lot of sense for us to be excited about this defense, guys. I was shocked by Bernie. I was very impressed by Shelley. I know that the ball hit him in his hands, and that's how they got the touchdown. People are saying it should have been a shutout. Hey, it is what it is. I was more impressed that he had an opportunity and that he was in the place where he was supposed to be to even have that opportunity. Now, he has to make that play. Do not get me wrong. But our defenders seemed to be where they needed to be all game long. Whether they dropped an interception or not, they were where they were supposed to be. I know Bernie dropped one as well, same kind of concept. But then you have Sam Webb come up and get one. Like, there was a lot. Curtis Bolton pops the ball out. I'm just like, this defense not only is flying around and being where they're supposed to, their communication is off the hook. And I'm gonna be honest with you, especially in that first half when you had Lawrence in there, he was struggling. He was struggling because our pass rush was intense. And when you actually back that kind of a pass rush up with actually cornerbacks and secondary that are actually covering, that's the results. We often said, how come we couldn't really, all we had all these pressures in the last few years? How come we haven't had more sacks? How can, one, Max Crosby gets held a lot. Two, when you don't have a secondary that's going to cover long enough, there's always going to be a slip out option for the quarterback to dump it off and get the ball out of his hand real quick. I didn't see a lot of that. Lawrence got sucked in real quick and had to pull the ball down versus get it out of his hands. It was awesome. And once again, no Crosby, no Jones, right? Young studs stepping up and making plays. Kuntz looked amazing. Rochelle looked amazing. I really thought the middle of that defense really held its own. You did not see Tillery, right? But Jenkins was in there moving things around, making some plays. I just really, really believe Neil Farrell, he didn't get any sacks, a lot of pressures, controlling that pocket, stopping the run. There was so much thing there. Now Adam Butler played really well. There's some things that I was missing. I wanted to see our rookie Young make a little bit more plays, have a little bit more opportunity. That was lacking. But I really felt our linebackers, our safeties, our corners, they were flying around, not overshooting the play, staying disciplined in their assignments and being right where they were supposed to be. Yeah, they moved the ball here and there and made some plays, but never once did it feel like it was going to get away from us. Not one time did it ever feel like it was going to get a hand like times past. They played very sound football. And if this is the beginning of something special, I'm here for it. Again, this is where all that optimism comes from, right? We have these type of conversations. We go out, we beat Bay Area rivals 34-7, our hated foes, whether it counts or not. It's exciting for the fan base. We all start talking about things from a totally different perspective. But right now, just like I mentioned last week, I want to reiterate it once again. Marcus Peters, Marcus Epps, Robert Spillane are the key reasons you're starting to see consistency and continuity on defense. We already had it up front. Max has always been that leader. He can get people hyped. But we have people in place right now that are not just playing their position, but they're coaching it. And they're making the players that surround them better. And that's what makes great teams. Great quarterbacks raise the level of play around them. I think Jimmy G has that capability simply because the locker room loves him. They like the dog in him. You've heard that several times. You're going to see the offense respond to Jimmy G differently. That's not a knock on the guy that was once here before. Change is inevitable in all sports, in all teams. Derek Carr needed change, and the Raiders needed change. And we're starting to see that across the board. Now, real quick about Josh and Dave. They're showing that they can do this job. I'm still on the fence when it comes to seeing how McDaniels handles the whole season, but I'm not down or against McDaniels whatsoever. I'm not one of those guys that are going to call him names and think that he can't just because he didn't do it in Denver over a decade ago. Okay? This guy has learned. He's brought in a good friend of his who he brought into the league. They're obviously on the same page. They're working together. They have a system and a culture they want to implement. It's starting to take form, and this is going to be a tall tale. Consistency starts with your GM and your head coach, number one, being on the same page, having a level of respect from your players and players buying into exactly what it is you're trying to teach, and then holding those players accountable when they're not. We can get mad all we want about the quarterbacks, the tight ends, the receivers, the defenders that are no longer here, or even the ones that are here that are from another organization. Has nothing to do with that. It's simply that they have people here that believe in them, believe in the way that they teach, and believe the thing that they are teaching. And as long as you have players that do that, that is your foundation. That's where it begins, okay? From there, you got to have the players to really fit and move that scheme forward, and have players on the field and on the team that not only can do it, but make the people around them better by teaching it, lining them up in the right position, helping them grow. It's not so easy. How many times do we see certain players go from one team to the next but not be the same player? Let me talk about one that really hits home. Nnamdi Asomugha. Shut down corner for us, lockdown bump, man-to-man, corner, outside. People didn't even want to throw to the guy. He goes to Philly. He went to a super team that year, by the way. They had a ton of great high-end football players. They put him in zone coverage. He was laughed at. It doesn't mean he's a bad corner. He was put in a bad situation. Again, right players, right scheme, and not only that, players that actually have the ability to lead men. Not only to play the position, but to coach it and make those around them better. And that's what we have across, especially from the defensive side. I see it more on defense right now. It's showing up a lot more there than on the offensive side of the ball. Hearing rumblings about Garoppolo's locker room control, people loving the dog in him. But all you ever hear about is Max Crosby, Peters, Spillane, and Epps, and how everybody are surrounding these players, asking questions, growing. They're even helping the offensive side of the ball, guys, right? By teaching them, saying, hey, this is what you did wrong. This is what you could do better. Communication across the board. Again, the word is consistency. We continue to see the same thing over and over again that works. It's going to lead into better continuity, which in reality is going to make us a better football team. And that's the question everybody wants to know, right? If I had this on a live stream right now, the number one question I'd probably get is, what do you think, Knight? What do you think is going to be? What do you think this team, what do you think their record's going to be? There's not enough information. There's not enough detail to make that, that decision just based off one preseason game and a couple of practices. But I will say this. We're heading in a better direction than most people thought we would be, because nobody gave Epps a chance, Spillane a chance whatsoever. They were pretty much down on those picks of bringing them in as free agents. Those two are paying big dividends at the moment. They're changing the dynamic of the back end of that defense, and I'm excited for it. The late addition of Marcus Peters is the cherry on top. And I think that is going to change the demographic of where we're heading. There's still a lot of stuff that has to fall into place. There's health concerns. There's so many different things. You got to have both sides of the ball producing. We know what that's like. Very, very much so. If you could just follow last year and how it's always one or the other and they can never be on the same page. But I will say this. I'm going to, either by the end of this week or sometime next week, I will break down and talk about the first quarter of the season. I will talk about the Denver Broncos, the Steelers, the Buffalo Bills, and the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a crucial first run at this, and I'll give you my expectations of how I feel that could turn out from a realistic perspective, and how that turns out really kind of springs forward and projects what the rest of the season could look like. I'll break all that down in the next video. Real quick, before we jump out of here, we have joint practices against the Rams. Again, the theme is consistency, man. Consistency and continuity. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to hear the same reports that we heard from last week. It's going to be a different squad. It's going to be a whole different dynamic. You're going to have different types of players, different offensive schemes, defensive schemes. I want to hear that the Raiders are performing at a high level, getting turnovers, making stops. They don't necessarily have to dominate. They definitely don't have to win the day, and they definitely don't have to win the preseason game. But what we're looking for is the consistency and the same type of reporting that we got last week, as far as the defense flying around, making plays, getting some turnovers, and Jimmy G raising his level, being competitive, and getting us in the end zone. That's all we're looking to hear from the practice. From the game, you're going to see much of the same. You're probably not going to see a lot of starters. You're going to get a big dose of AOC again. Again, we're going to be looking for consistency. We're going to want to see him kind of replicate and maybe even get better on some of the things that he did last week. You want to see this defense step up. People continue to fly around and make some plays. Consistency. It's preseason. None of this matters. We just want to see the things that we keep hearing, that we keep hearing them. We've heard a lot of good things thus far. Consistency. I want to keep hearing those good things, right? I want to keep hearing that they're turning the ball over, that they're flying around, that one day the defense is winning, the next day the offense is scoring. Consistency and continuity. Anyway, this is your first time here. Hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, so you can be updated every time we drop another episode. Man, I want to thank everybody for all your support over the years. Once again, think about checking my Independently Blind page just to see what it's about. You're going to be hearing a lot about it as the season continues this year. I'm really trying to change the lives of teenage kids, primarily as they deal with sight loss. It's something I do for my 8 to 5. I'm not here for a cash grab. I'm just here to support the blind community, as well as the spectrum of disability, anybody that's dealing with any type of loss, that's looking to be educated, advocated for, motivated, and inspired to get out and live a different lifestyle. That's what Independently Blind is all about. Please take some time to check it out. And until next time, stay Raider strong. Night out.